This semester I took an advanced photography class, and it was one of the best classes that I've taken in college so far. So I wanted to go through some of the things that I learned that I thought were really cool and some of the cameras that I got to play with. So I took photography one last spring where I got to use the Pentax K1000. So I already used this for about like half the semester, so I already knew how to use it. It's a really nice camera. It looks like this. You take the lens cap off. Tells you how many shots you have left. This is where you release, and then this is where you change what you're rating your ISO at. Right now I have it at 64 just because I was shooting on 100 ISO film. Normally if I'm shooting the 400 TX, I would go for a 200. I like to overexpose for the shadows. Here is where you would pop it open to load the film. And this is where you would crank it after you shot. Very simple. And then this is where you would release and then roll back in like that. The movement is very similar to shooting digital, so it's not my favorite film camera, but a lot of my black and whites from this came out really nicely. I can insert some photos here. The other film camera that I got to use was the Rolleicord, which is a medium format camera. Super fun. This is the viewfinder. You would focus here, advance the film on the left. You trigger by pulling it. It would normally be here and you pull it to the side and then you release here. I'm not gonna do that because I have film on it right now. Here is where you can lock so you don't make double exposures, and then this is where you can pull down to do a self timer. And you can actually change some of the settings inside. It's pretty easy to load, but I can't open it right now. You do need an extra spool when you do it. It has a waist viewfinder, so you kind of go around like this to take photos. Overall, just a really fun experience shooting medium format because I really like the square shapes. I much prefer the Rolleicord. Like, I think it was a magical moment when I got to use the medium format camera for the first time. So the other camera that I got to use was a large format camera, but I only really shot 4 sheets of film on this just because it was kind of hard to learn and I didn't have that much time this term to play with it. So I basically inserted the preloaded film holders. While I inserted it, the lens was closed, and then I'm metering to get the aperture and shutter speed. I'm basically triggering it so that I can release it. Then I'm using the cord to release, to press the button so I don't shake the camera as much because of how large it is. It was set up on a tripod and I was able to move around the actual lens of it to have it pointed downwards. 4 sheets of film that I later developed didn't turn out that well. They were a bit scratched, and I was just really new to developing film completely in pitch black. So it was a really interesting experience, and then I'll show some of my scans here. The other gadget I have is this light meter. It's the Sekonic one. I use this mostly for the Rolleicord because it doesn't have a built-in light meter. This light meter is really easy to use. Either you measure the light landing on what you want to take a photo of, or you measure it on what you want to take a photo of. You power on, and this is how you would read. It would give you a rating. You can move it up and down. You can change what your ISO is set at, like that. Have it at 200 again. And then you can change the mode. I keep it on sunlight. The digital camera that we are using is the Canon EOS Rebel T5i. I'm actually using it to video right now, which is why I can't show you it, but I can insert a photo here. The other thing I learned is how to create an organized workflow for digital editing. For hard drive setup, we went through the basics of creating separate folders to have your raw files, your working PSDs, your final JPEGs, your TIFFs from scans, which is really helpful when it comes to editing. We used a bridge workflow where you would open up the image in Bridge, then open it as an object in Photoshop, and then work on your curve layers there for color correcting. Another thing that I learned how to do was scan film. We use an Epson scanner, so you would put it in the film area guide and then you would just line it up and scan. I had a couple struggles with a lot of dust, just like random debris all over a lot of my film when I scanned, but that just takes a lot of patience to clean all your film and brush all the air off before you scan. The other thing I learned is how to print on an inkjet printer. I learned a lot about like color profiles, how to create an ICC profile, how to test your prints, and also like the different types of paper, what that means for your photograph. These are some test prints that I did on a luster paper. This one actually turned out darker because I accidentally had it on the print setting of glossy paper when it should have been on premium photo paper luster. So there's a bit of a difference. This one ended up being a little too cyan in the snow, and this one had a little bit too much of a magenta in the shadow, so I redid those. Next are some prints that I did on matte paper. So for these ones, you change the paper settings and you also have to change the ink from photo black to matte black. So some of the edges on these two kind of came out wonky. They weren't really lined up correctly, but they worked out nicely for test prints. This one is a little too green and a little too dark for my taste. This one was pretty nice. This is a photo that actually printed pretty evenly on all four sides, but the size was too small for what I wanted, so I gave it to my friend. There's definitely quite a difference in the two papers. This luster is a lot more reflective, and then the matte is just a little drier and a little harder to the touch. But these were really good because I was printing postcards. I have some other smaller test prints that didn't turn out as nicely. This one was a little too blue. This one was fine, just too small. This one again went a little too green after I went too red. This one was too magenta. This one could have done with a little masking here. I don't know, I thought the composition was cool, but I wasn't very in love with it after I printed it. This one I like. It is a bit yellow, but I think that's the charm of it. I'm kind of into it. These were my test glossy prints, and then I went on to matte for my postcards. Don't have those here because I mailed them out already. I also played with some cyanotypes, some sun lumens, more alternative types of photography, which were all really fun. So here I have some cyanotypes that I made. Basically, you paint on the chemistry and then you lay on stuff on top of it and let it sit in the sun to develop, and it becomes this kind of dark blue color. This is like more of a thick, like printmaking paper. We also got to talk to two artists. So one of them was Zora Murph, the other was Lucas Foglia. I found the Zora Murph talk really interesting because I feel like he was very personal when talking about his experiences with racism and how that has affected how he takes photographs now. But they were all really cool. I got to learn a lot more about their work, and for some of them I got to ask and hear about the answers to some really personal and interesting questions, which I really enjoyed. I think one thing that I learned is that I really love shooting in film. Like, digital is amazing, but film really feels just a lot more special to me, especially color film. I think I would highly recommend anybody in college to at least attempt like one studio art class. Like, especially if you do like art, like it's a really great way to be able to deep dive into something in like maybe like just a semester or even a term. And like, honestly, I would never have any other opportunity to play with like an $800 camera, but I get to because of the kind of resources my school has. I know the term system isn't common for a lot of different schools, but I hope wherever you are, your schooling is going fine right now. And if you're not in school, I hope the rest of your life is also doing good. But if if you ever have any questions about what it's like to be a student at Wellesley, I'm really happy to answer any questions, especially as someone who is taking a lot more arts classes than maybe the normal student would. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.